With only 3 games and one that wasn't greatly received, it's shocking how much of a video game monolith this franchise has become. Isaac's iconic suits can still often be spotted around conventions, and the game certainly hasn't left the public's eye, especially as news of the game's remake surfaced recently. So how did a new title taking on one of gaming's frequent tropes of survival horror come out as one of the greatest horror games of all time? Well, let's take a look at
Dead Space.
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 Dead Space. So what makes Dead Space so memorable? Well, first and foremost, I'd say agency.
Well, it's an immersive experience. Unlike a film which is passive, you are a participant in the game. You're playing the character. There are moments playing sequels of Silent Hill that were genuinely disturbing to play. You're not sitting back and watching something. You are making the choice to go down that hallway. You are making the choice to, you know what I mean? And I think in that sense, there's a level of suspense and sort of within the context of the interactivity that makes it maybe more scary.
Now, this concept might not seem to be unique to Dead Space, but Dead Space sure doesn't break up your control over the character. Some games like BioShock use this to great effect, crafting an almost meta-commentary about the actions the player takes in a game itself. But while BioShock took the player's agency at a precise, story-prompted moment, Dead Space specifically chooses not to do this.
Interactive moments. There are no cutscenes in the game. So we're trying to tell the story through video logs, but also what Isaac does. You know, one of the main things with this game was trying to come up with really cool, big, interactive scenes.
Whether it's the lore you uncover, the upgrade stations, right down to your own health bar, everything was presented as in-world. But even more so, if you needed a great, bearing, timed threat for your player, how would you implement this? Well, you could do what most big games do.
Help! Please! Someone! I'm going to die!
Or do you specifically design an entire event with numerous variations so that the player can encounter it anywhere?
And so we threw him on the ground and we realized that now he's dragging him. And we're dragging him for a long way because we wanted you to have some way of shooting. So we realized then that we have to animate all his moves on his back, shooting all the different weapons, just for this one scene that someone told me lasted about 40 seconds. We had to remake all of his shooting mechanics and some struggling mechanics. It was daunting.
And keeping the agency of the character solely and completely with the player is a much bigger deal in a horror game than others, because it puts the player on edge during the entirety of the game. Any person who plays horror games will know that while cutscenes can be scary, they're still scripted. What happens in a cutscene happens in that cutscene every time. But Dead Space makes sure you're never not in control, which means monsters can attack you when talking to someone, when listening to an audio log, when in the elevators, and most insidiously, which just adds to the stress of playing the game. Dead Space really understood it's not just the jump scare itself, it's the knowledge that the jump scare is coming, that it's inevitable and you just don't know when or where it will happen. That's the gut-wrenching, high-stress feeling that Dead Space inspires. It seems to permeate throughout the entire game, making players feel uneasy and on edge. Fear can be overcome, usually with a safe area, but paranoia, that is difficult to overcome, even when you feel like you're safe. But even beyond the jump scares, Dead Space was first and foremost a horror game. The enemies, seemingly taking inspiration from The Thing, Alien, and others, really dig deep into the horrifying. Humans coming back to life and attacking people isn't anything new, but mutating into terrifying creatures out to rip people apart, from old crew right down to, well... that's messed up. And even into the gameplay, there's a sense of stressful urgency. Isaac feels heavy, as though he has real weight to him. He lumbers forward, his steps loud, his attacks forceful. It's as though he has to struggle to move his heavy suit. In comparison, almost all the Dead Space enemies are fast and dexterous, jumping, climbing, and moving around very quickly. This is where the notion of being a tank in survival horror games comes into play. And this really feels true with Isaac, but without the tank controls that so many people hate. What this means is that running isn't going to get you far. You have to deal with what you're dealt, which adds to the stress of the game, especially once certain enemies start to show up. There's a reason the term Resident Evil in space comes up when talking about Dead Space. And these encounters could happen anywhere. The developers randomized when and where creatures could strike. So if you're playing through a second time, you're going to find different enemies in different parts. This keeps the fear present at all times, as no one knows when or where you're going to be attacked. The stress is always present in Dead Space. Though I'm not trying to say it's stressful in a bad way. It is definitely a stressful horror game, but in all the right ways a horror game should be. There's certain games where you can feel the passion of the team that made them. It's a special feel a game has, where even those who don't like the game can still appreciate the work and love that went into it. And Dead Space is undeniably one of those games. So this Halloween, if you're looking for a horror game a little bit different, but still one of the best even now, then grab a snack, turn the lights off, turn the sound way up, and prepare yourself for...